Hey guys, today I am working with a Samsung console top dryer today. It's got a few problems that we're going to look for, namely that it's not going to turn on, or it turns on but it will not progress with spinning, and you won't hear anything actually running on it, which we suspect is the belt and the idler pulley. So I got a belt and idler pulley here from LFORBB. These are really high quality aftermarket idler pulleys and belts, and I'm really excited about going into this machine and showing you how to switch it all out. It's not hard to do, but it does take a little bit of time because you got to take everything apart on this machine to do it. So I hope you will enjoy this today and hopefully get your machine back up and running quickly.
Before we begin, it's worth noting that the installation procedures for this Samsung dryer are almost exactly the same for both LG and Kenmore dryers that look similar to this one. So if you have a dryer that looks similar, chances are this will work too. First, to remove the top of the dryer, you can use a putty knife to depress two tabs on the dryer to open the lid. However, the amount of space that these style dryers have, they may not let you do it, or the clips could be too stiff to allow you to open them up. In this case of the video, I failed at it, so I decided to open up the top the alternate way from the back. On the back of the dryer, two screws hold the top of the unit on. Unscrew them and you'll be able to push the lid of the dryer forward to allow it to lift upwards. Once the lid is opened up, you'll want to make sure to reinstall the screws so that you can lean the lid behind the unit. Otherwise, the lid could fall off and end up hanging just by the mainboard wires and potentially damaging them. To get the door off the unit, there are 4 screws on the top of the dryer lid, as well as 2 on the dryer lint filter, and then 1 where the door switch is. All 7 screws need removed from the door to remove it. Additionally, there are 2 metal tabs that help keep the door on, and with all the screws removed, you can depress the tab to take the door off. With the door slightly removed, you can attempt to remove the door switch wire harness. However, I had a terrible time with this one, so rather than fight it with limited room, I decided to take the door off by pulling it out and lifting up slowly as not to damage the wiring. Then I placed the door on top of the dryer to have more room to remove the harness, which was much easier. The bulkhead on a Samsung dryer is held on by 6 screws, 4 on the bulkhead itself and 2 located on the dryer vent housing at the bottom. All 6 screws need removed before taking the bulkhead off. You'll also need to remove the moisture sensor near the heating element in the lower right corner of the dryer. Once all the screws are removed, you can lift up. There's only one Phillips head screw holding the idler arm into place. It can be removed pretty easily, other than the fact you have to lean far into the cabinet to see it to unscrew it. Pulley from the belt. However, in the case of this dryer, the belt wasn't even on the pulley, because you'll find out shortly the pulley was totally destroyed. A good rule of thumb is that if there's any play on the belt in the dryer, the pulley is bad. There's only one Phillips head screw holding the idler arm into place. It can be removed pretty easily, other than the fact you have to lean far into the cabinet to see it to unscrew it, or it out of the cabinet. The cabinet has cutouts on each side so the drum can be removed pretty quickly. Now we can investigate the idler pulley. Normally there's a large plastic wheel on the idler arm, but it's been totally destroyed at some point, and it's caused the belt switch to prevent the unit from turning on. It's absolutely clear it has to be replaced. There's only one Phillips head screw holding the idler arm into place. It can be removed pretty easily, other than the fact you have to lean far into the cabinet to see it to unscrew it. Now we're finally going to get to the belt and pulley out of the bags to install them. Some cheap off-brand pulleys don't have bearings in them, which can lead to the pulleys literally melting on the arms as the dryer runs. That's likely why this one died, so if you get a replacement, make sure it has the bearing in the middle like this one. I'm using the one we got sponsored with by LFORBB, so it does have a really heavy bearing in it. The new idler arm and pulley come with a new screw, but not a new mainspring to retain the pulley arm. Something I overlooked during filming all of this was the spring, because it shot off of the arm before I even opened the dryer up, and it ended up being stuck somewhere else in the dryer. Here's a quick look at installing the spring, but not at a great angle, as was an afterthought. You want to make sure the spring is inserted into both holes properly, and you may even need to use a pair of needle nose pliers to get the metal to thread on properly. Make sure the belt is lined up properly with the pulley. Also, make sure the grooves of the belt are facing inside the drum so that they can thread onto the motor assembly itself. Here's a quick look at installing the spring, but not at a great angle, as was an afterthought. You want to make sure the spring is inserted into both holes properly, and you may even need to use a pair of needle nose pliers to get the metal to thread on properly. Once that is done, you'll thread the belt onto the motor, then push the idler pulley to allow the belt to rest on the idler pulley, creating tension on the belt. One major thing I noted when I was installing this was that the belt was slightly smaller than the old belt, although it was the correct belt model number. I had to take the belt off and stretch it by stepping on the belt and pulling on it with my arms to make it a bit longer. It did take a few attempts, but eventually the belt went on very, very easy once it was the proper length. Now we are going to put the dryer back together. First, we'll put the bulkhead back on the unit, and you're going to need to make sure that the tabs of the bulkhead go on properly before beginning to put the screws back onto the unit, because sometimes the casing on this type can shift. Also, don't forget to install the moisture sensor harness while putting the 6 screws back into the bulkhead. Now you will put the door back on. First off, don't forget the door switch harness that was a real pain earlier in the video. You'll slot the bottom of the door onto the metal hinges that hold the door in place at the bottom. Then you'll go ahead and reinstall the 7 screws that hold the door to the bulkhead and the dryer cabinet. You'll also need to make sure that you position the metal retention clips properly, but it's not too hard to line them all up and make the door installation go really, really fast. Now you have to simply drop the lid and make sure it sits properly on the plastic posts for it to lock into place, and now we're all done. We just have to plug the unit back in and wait for the moment of truth. And now we have a Samsung dryer that will actually turn on and is running just fine.
So that's it on this video on installing the belt and idler pulley. If you're still having issues with the unit not turning on, you could have a situation where the control board, something is going on with it, or your motor could be bad. Sometimes the motors like to overheat to the point that they will not turn on. So again, check your motor, check your control board. At that point, though, you probably want a tech to get involved, because at that point it does start dealing with live voltage, and that's really not something for a YouTube video. So have a great day. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys.